We are on Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph. We're in the middle of a discussion that Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya was explaining why he said that we have to retract the gezerah against using the shemen, the oil of a non-Jew. He said we could retract that, but he wasn't willing to retract that for the pas. They asked him why not. He said because we already heard that this Rabbi Yossi ben Yezer Streda that he said about a grasshopper that it's tar, and Mashka Beis Medachah that it's tar, and someone who touches a mace that he's considered tameh. And they called him Yosef Shari. They called him the matir because he was matir three things. So they said to them, so what's the big deal? You're talking about you a matir shemen. So if you've been matir the pas, it's only two things. So what are you nervous about? So that's where Zok the Gemara. So we're the third line, the third wide line on Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph. Amalei Anoshar Yachriti. There's a third thing that I was already matir. So if it would be matir the pas, that would be the third thing. Mahi, what's the other thing in addition to Shem that was matir? Tnan. If a man said, this is a get, it's obviously a man who didn't have any children, and he had a brother, and he knew if he were to die, his wife would be neifel yim to his brother, and she'd be stuck. She'd have to get a get. She'd have to become a chalutza. She couldn't marry a kain. It's not good to be neifel yibam. So he gave her a get, and he said, if I don't come back in 12 months, I'm going away on a trip. I want you to have a get. If I don't come back, so the actual words were zegit get if I don't return in 12 months. And then he died within 12 months. Ain't I get? The Tanna Kama says it's not considered a get, and this is going to be depending on when is this get, when did he intend for the get to take effect? Does he mean me'achshav? If it's me'achshav, then it's a good get. Tanna Kama says no. He means that it should only take effect after 12 months. And since after 12 months, he says that when I come back, if I don't come back after 12 months, it should be a get. He means that at that time, it should become a get at the end. And since he's already dead at that time, his get cannot take effect. So therefore, she's neifel yibam. But Tani Allah, Rabbi Seinu Tiru Ali Nase. And it said, the Brisa says about this, the Rabbi Seinu were mater linase. They were makel. Rabbi Man Rabbi Seinu, Rabbi Yehuda Mashmuel, Bezdin of the Sharu Mishcha. It's the same Bezdin of Yehuda Nasiya, the Amira, who was mater oil from Ovid Kechavim. Just happens to be, it's the same one who was mater. Why was he mater? Zara the Rabbi Yossi. He also Rabbi Yossi Damas Manishal Star Merchiachalav. He says, he says, I want it to be a get if I don't come, if I don't arrive. Since there's a date written on the get, that's the date that it was written, even though there's a tna, even though he said, since there's a date written on the star, that's what he has in mind. So, therefore, it takes effect from the time when he said, and not at the end of the 12 months. This was the Hayra, this was the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya, and he says that the people of his time were not moided, the Bezdin at his time was not masking him, and he already said that the people who support him, both of them are references to those to his Bezdin. So in any case, according to this other Shita, Abba Bareder Achia, we don't have really a third example. The Rishonim say different possibilities of what the third heter of his was, but he's chaylik on us. Amalei Rebbe Lazar lahu Saba. Rebbe Lazar said to this elderly man, Kisharusa la'alta shusa delayasi adim la'achashnei masa chaydish the kain late tonight. If we say that this get is a good get, when does it take effect? That means when is she allowed to remarry? Does it happen right away as soon as he dies? because then we say it took effect retroactively. They say she still has to wait till Shnei Masach Chodesh. So we have to see Taisus to explain why should you have to wait for the end. The only reason why the get works is if it took effect before he died. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a get. So what's the point? So Taisus la'alta sheres dehalayasi b'imtayim pshita de'alta hi muteres to be yad shemes harei atnai k'mekoyim delayashiv. That's at that point the tnai is mekoyim. There's no reason, nothing stopping her from marrying. We're geyser that if someone will see that someone made such a tnai and he died, that someone will say, "Oh, so that's obviously a good get," and they'll use such a get with a tnai even though the man returned after 12 months, even if he didn't die. So maybe it's a gzeira that you have to wait the 12 months in any case. Kamashmon is not. The Tanakh. Our case was in Basi Mikan Vashlesh Viad Shnei Masach Chodesh. So it's not conclusive from his lashon if he means to say that I want it to be from now, and this is just a t'nai that it should take effect now, or if he means to say that I don't want it to take effect until I don't come up at the end of 12 months. But the Mishnah says a simple case that we could have asked this question. The person said specifically, I want this to be a get from now if I don't come back within 12 months. In that case, there's no shiloh. That's certainly a good get because he said me'achshav, so there's no possibility he means for it to take effect afterwards. So what do we ask this shiloh of when is he like Taisa said, it's only a shiloh, are we geyser in a case where he was mace up to where he wasn't mace. But that doesn't make a difference whether he said me'achshav or we're saying like Rabbi Yosi and Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya Paskin that we treat Imlay Basi as if he said me'achshav. So let's ask on the case of the Mishnah instead of the case of the Amay Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya. We really could have asked it on the case of the Mishnah rather than the case of Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya. Since this question came up when Rabbi Yehuda, when he was in that bezdin that had paskin, he was by the bezdin of Yehuda Nesiya, so therefore he applied it to that. Amar Abai, Hakol Moedim l'kasheteitze chamel u'netika l'chinafka ka'amalo. Everyone will agree that if instead of using these lashonis that we said in basi mikad or me'achshav, I wanted to be go from now if me'achshav im lebasi mikad or yud beis chodesh. That's what we've been discussing. Abaye says everyone agreed if someone said that I want the get to take effect when the sun comes out in the morning. So there he's clearly saying, he's not saying me'achshav. He's not saying it's just a t'nai. He's saying l'chashateitze, when the sun comes out. So he's saying it's two things. He's saying if the sun comes out, obviously if the sun doesn't come out, then this will never take effect. But he wants it to take effect at that time. So l'chinafka kamlu v'chi mayis balele get lachamisu. If he dies during the night, then it won't be a good get because this get is not scheduled to take effect till after he dies. Till after he died during the night, so the sun came out after that. On the other hand, if he says it doesn't say im loibasi mikan or im teitze on chamimitika, but he says almanas on condition. So on condition is very clearly just a condition. It has nothing to do with the time of when he wants it to come out. He's not saying anything about when it should take effect. That's certainly going to be me'achshav, because all he said was a pure t'nai without any delay in when it should take effect. Then it's certainly good. Whenever you would say, which we would apply to our case of imbasi mikan va'ad la'achar imbasi mikan va'ad yud beis chodesh, when he says almanas, that's certainly like he says me'achshav, because all he's doing is adding a t'nai, but he's saying it right now, so he wants it to take effect now. The only case that they're arguing about is the case that we discussed. We said, he said zeg gitach im loy basi, or by the case of the sun, if he says im basi, if the sun will come out. Even though he didn't say anything that was dispositive, he didn't say me'achshav, which means from now. He didn't say almanas, which means from now, and he didn't also say lichashatetze, but he said if it goes out. So that's not clear if it's me'achshav or if it means when it comes out. So he holds like since it says zman in the star, that's what he means to say. That's like if he said from today or if he said from now. That's as if he said in Macy at all, and therefore they don't hold of that, and therefore they'll say that it's going to be treated as a get la'achamis. Now we're going to go back. So this is so we're done with this is the third example which made Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya reluctant to be mater pas, because then it would have been the third thing. He would have been mater shemen, he would have been mater the isha that got a get in Leibasi Mikan Va'ad Yud Beis Chaydish. So therefore he did. But we had to prove our point that anyone who says 3 heterim is going to be considered excessively lenient. We brought from Yaisi Ish Trader. What was it? I'm sorry. Yeah, Yaisi Ben Yezer Ish Trader. So we're gonna repeat over what he said. Gufa. Hey, Rabbi Yaisi Ben Yezer Ish Trader. I'll kamsa dechan that he said about this type of grasshopper that it's tar. The al mashka be mitvecha dechan, and he also said about the liquids in a certain section where they used to shech the animals in the Beis Hamikdash, that again, that mashka is tar. While dekarav lemesa misav, and if someone who touches the mace, that he's tummy. These are 3 examples of him being maker. The Gemara is going to go through them one by one. Karla Yosef Sharia, because of these 3 heterim, they called him Yosef the maker one. So firstly, my ayol kimsa. What is this grasshopper ayol kimsa that he's held is tar? Rapapa Amar Shushiva. Rabchia Baravi Mishmeide Ula Amar Suspel. They argue about whether it's the Shushiba or the Suspel. What does that mean? Rapapa Amar Shushiva. He's talking about a certain grasshopper was called the Shushiva. Kamifik Baroishe Arach. This is a grasshopper that has a long head. Marsava Roisha Arach Aser. Marsava Roisha Arach Mutter. One holds a long head is Aser, and the other holds a long head is Mutter. So Rashi has an explanation that the Torah lists 4 kosher grasshoppers, and they all have 4 common characteristics. They have 4 regular legs plus 2 jumping legs. They have, in addition, I think 4 wings, and the wings cover most of the body of the grasshopper. Those are the 4 simonim of a grasshopper. If you're ever very hungry in the woods, keep that in mind. But as it happens, all of these grasshoppers additionally have a short head, not a long head. And the Gemara has this question, I think in Chulin, about when the Torah said these 4 grasshoppers, was it a klalu prat, which means ein bechlal mashav prat, so therefore everything has to be exactly like these 4 in order to be mutter, and a grasshopper with a long head is not exactly like it. Or do we say it's a klalu pratu klal, which means it's marba, it means anything that's like the klal, it's only memay one thing, and then even one with a long head would be mutter. So that was the first pshat of what the machlokes was. Rav Chia Baram Mishmeidula Amar Suspel. We're talking about a suspel, a different grasshopper. They would all agree that a long head is aser. The question over here, one of the simonim of a kosher grasshopper is that the wings cover the body of the grasshopper. We're talking about when the wings just barely cover the body of the grasshopper. Marsava Ruba Kol Dubinon, Marsava Ruba de Minkabino. One Madama says as long as it's a rive, even if it's just barely a rive, that's enough. And the other one says no, it has to be a simon that's nicker, it has to be substantially more than rive in order for it to be a kosher grass. The second one, that the second heter of Rav Yossi ben Yezer was on the liquids that were in this section of the Beis Hamikdash. My dachan, what was the heter? Rav, what does it mean that they're mutter or that they're tar? Rav Amar dachan mamish. Rav says that the mashka over there that touched something that's tamei remains tar altogether. Shmuel says no. It's certainly this mashka that touched the tumah becomes tamei itself. The question is if it's metamacher. But it certainly becomes tamei itself. The Gemara is going to explain what's the basis of this machlekes. Rav Amadach and Mamish, he says it's Mamish mutter kasav tumas mashkin derabanan. He holds that mashkin becoming tamei is only a derabanan. The whole tumas mashkin is derabanan. The chi gazer rabbanan tumas mashkin dialma. They generally say that mashkin become tamei. But in the Beis Hamikdash, where the Chachamim like to reduce the amount of tumas because they don't want to passel kodshim. The Raisa take a kachim because of a tumah derabanan, like gazer rabban. The Chachamim are geyser that the mashka should become tamei in the first place. He says it's only tamei to be. It's only kosher from being tam other things. He holds that tumas mashka deraisa. The Chachamim don't have the power to make something that's tamei deraisa that should be taught. Tamachem derabanan, but that the power for mashka to be tama others is only derabanan. Because derabanan, mashkin diyama, mashkin made the like gazu. They weren't geyser on the mashkin that were in this part of the Beis Hamikdash because we don't want kachim. They don't extend the gzeret and they say they should pass all other things because they don't want to make more kachim in the Beis Hamikdash. Finally, val dikarev lemisa misav, b'karle Yosef Shari. The final thing that made him called Yosef Ben Yezer Sharia, Yosef Sharia, was because he said that something that touched a mace becomes tamei. Correct the Gemara. Yosef Eiser Mibayle. It says it becomes tamei. That's a chumrah. It's not a heter. So why was he called a mater for saying someone touching a tamei is someone touching a mace is tamei? But oidei raisi. And secondly, what's this discussion about whether someone touches a mace, whether he's tamei? With the Raisa, we know there's a psukim that says the pasuk says that someone who touches yitma shivas yom becomes tamei tumas mace, that he's tamei for 7 days. So Gemara, the Raisa dikarev tamei. With the Raisa, that's not what Yosef ben Yezer was saying. He of course understood that what touches a mace becomes tamei. The Raisa dikarev tamei, certainly that which touches a mace is tamei. Dikarev tar. Midaraisa, though, something that touches a person who touches a mace, and then someone else touches that person, that's tar midaraisa. It's only the rabbanon that it's mitam others. Also, in the gazer afilu dikarev b'dikarev, and we came in and the chacham were geyser on that there's a tumah that when someone touched the tamei that he's mitama others. He came to say that no, that someone who had touched a mace, that is not going to be tamei. He was mevatel the gzeira daban. As we all know, right? We know that someone who touches the mace becomes tamei. He's a rishon l'tumah and he's metama others, and that's the raisa. The Torah says. Whatever a tummy touches, whoever touches the one who became tummy from a mace, he himself becomes tummy. Amrua Rabban Kamei de Rava. They said this question to Rava. I said, "What is Yosef ben Yezer? How can he be chaylik on a gzeres hakasav?" So Amrua Rabban Kamei de Rava Mishmei de Mazut Rebeder of Nachman. The Mishmei of Nachman. He said, Rava said, B'shem Rav Nachman, the Raisa dikar b'chiburit to Meshiva, Shalai b'chom turas erev. Midar Raisa, certainly a person who touched a mace becomes tamei tumas, he becomes a rishon l'tumah, and he's metama others a tumas shiva that they have to wait 7 days. They have to be mazah the mechatas and wait 7 days. But that's only b'chiburim. That's only if the person who touched the mace was touching the mace at the same time that he touched the second person. That's what you get at Tumas Shiva. But Shaloi v'chiburim, if it's not at the same time, Tumas Erev. It's only 1 day Tumah. It becomes Aser till the day he's Taival, and that night he becomes Tar. But also in the Gaza afilu Shaloi v'chiburim Tumas Shiva. And we were guys that everything gets at Tumas Shiva. But also Iyu, then Yosef ben Yezer came, v'ogma adai Raisa. He switched it back to the Raisa, then Einachanami, someone who touched Shaloi B'chiburin, he touched the mace, then later on he touched another person, that person only becomes Tameh for 1 day, not for 7. The Raisa Mahi, where do we see this chiluk between Chiburin, whether he touched at the same time, the person touched the mace at the same time he's touching someone else, that it's Shiva, and it's only one if it wasn't Chiburin, the and again, it says someone who touches is going to be tummy for 7 days. And the pasuk also says, okay, so how could you have on one hand we said Shivas Yom, and then we say Arav. Okay, so Kam b'chibur and Kam b'shaloi b'chibur. And since the Torah dictates 2 results, one time it says that someone who touches the person who became tummy from a mace is Shivas Yom, and another time it says that night he becomes tar. So we have to mechalik between whether it's b'chiburin or shaloi b'chiburin, if it's simultaneous with the Rishons touching the mace or not. Amalu Rava. Rava said to this whole exposition that they said b'shem Rav Nachman, that the Rabbanim was saying b'shem Rav Nachman that it's a chilukah between b'chiburin and la b'chiburin, and that's what Yossi ben Yezer was coming to be mater, that you shouldn't be geyser, that even shaloi b'chiburin it's going to have a tumah shib. Haven't I told you, don't ascribe empty chelim to Rav Nachman, meaning make up your own svaras and shoehorn into Rav Nachman. That's not what Rav Nachman said. Rav Nachman said, Rav Yossi ben Yezer was coming to be matir a Safek Tumah versus a Rabbim. He was saying that if we all know, we've come across this many times in our travels in Shas, that a Safek Tumah, if someone's not sure if he touched a mace, if he's in Rosh Hashanah, he's tar. If he's Rosh Hashanah, he's tamei. So that's what Yossi ben Yezer was coming to Imat. In fact, in Marva, but we learned this out from a Saita. This is a deraisa that a Safek Tumah B'Rishus Harabim is mutter. Ma Saita Rosh Hashanah, just like a Saita is in Rosh Hashanah, it's in a hidden place, right? Saita is only metama, even though it's not tumah per se. What it really is talking about when a saita is miyached with a man. That's certainly in it's a stira in a hidden place. Av tumah rosh hayached. Since we learn out the din of tumah from a saita, so we say that just like that is restricted, that it's only rosh hayached, so too the tumah, the Safek tumah that we have in general tumas, it's also only going to be rosh hayached. Correct the Gemara. Ha'amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha ve'emer. I'm sorry. So on this din, Ha'amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha ve'emer came. The Gemara answers. So you're saying that you learned that from Saita. So why did Yossi ben? How could Yossi ben Yezer be mater? What is it? Would we need him to be mater? We learned it out from Saita. So the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan had said, even though the halacha is that someone who was tamei misafek in Rosh Hashanah is sveikaitar. We don't spread that. We don't tell people that halacha. We don't want people to be makel in tumas. But also then Yossi ben Yezer came. He was paskined in public that the din is safek tumah rabim is feikai tar. Tanya nami hachiv Yuda Aimer kairos noatz lahem. Rabbi Yehuda said that Yossi ben Yezer set these markers in the fields. He placed these markers so people know where the Sharabim ends, to know where the Sveika is tar. And if you go past that point and you have a Safek Tumah, it's going to be Tumah. However, Rabbi Yanai, when this was brought to him, Amalahu Hamaya Beshikosa de Benahara Zilu Tuvulu. He said if someone actually, there's different Mefarshim explain what Rav Yanai's gloss on this was. But essentially, he was saying a chumrah. He was saying if you become tamei, even with a tamei safek tumah sharabim, which we're saying is fake tar, he said, here's the water. Go and be taivel. What does it hurt? Go be taivel to get rid of the tumah. So the Gemara weiter from the Mishnah. We had said in the Mishnah hashilkus. The shilkus are cooked foods. This is the isser of bishul akum that we're all familiar with. Then, in addition to the isser that we have to have hashgacha on our food to make sure that it doesn't have treif mixed up in it, there's also a gzeirus takanas. We're going to see a takanas chachamim that one cannot eat food that was cooked by a guy. Where does this come from? That he said that where was this pasuk? Sindvarim. It says that they asked for food from Sichon when they were passing through, and they said, give us food for kesef, and that will supply us v'chalti, and we'll eat it. You'll give us water for silver, and we'll drink it. Kamayim. So it tells you that the food that you get from a guy, this is coming from Sichon, who is a guy, has to be like the mayim. Mayim shlo. Just like water, when you get it, it's not cooked. There's nothing happened to it. Also, the food has to be unchanged. The guy cannot have cooked it. You're not allowed to eat it. And this is all. I think the Rishonim explained that this is a asmachta. Zak Gemara. We say that if you get wheat, did I skip this? I'm sorry. What about wheat, kernels of wheat that was roasted by a guy? That should also be aser because it's changed. It was fresh wheat and now it's roasted wheat. If you say in a chanami, it's aser al bishul agim, v'tanya chitim vasan kloyes mutar, and those are mutar. If its form hasn't changed, even though it got maybe harder from being roasted, if its form hasn't changed, it's not going to be aser al bishul agim. If they had roasted kernels of wheat and then the guy ground it up, and you had hashgacha the whole time, so you know it's kosher, but it should be aser al bishul agim because it's, first of all, it was cooked up, it became hard, and now you ground it up so it doesn't look like the way it did. And you said the nafkamina is whenever it changed, then it becomes aser. If you roasted grains, the flours and the fine flours that come from it amata. The Isra of Bishalakim is only when, because of the heat, it changed from its original form. It's not enough that it just had a change, that it changed without changing its form by the heat, that it went from soft to hard. And it's not enough that the guy ground it from hard to soft, but he didn't use the fire to change its form. You have to have both. It has to have that its form was changed because of the fire. Where are you getting this from? The Torah didn't say anything about ar, it just said mayim. Now you're reading in all these conditions that doesn't say in the pasuk. So Gemara Gemara says Einachanami. This is all. It's really midrabanan. It's just a chiv again mishum chasnus. We don't want to hang around with goyim, and the Kra is only a smachta b'alma. So don't ask so many questions about how you could learn these halachas from the pasuk. Now, a bunch of halachas, which I hopefully are somewhat familiar to you, about the dinim of Bishul Akum. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak Amar Rav, Kol hanechel k'moshu chai ein ba mishum bishulei avoda k'chaychavim. Anything that's eaten raw, does not have a din of Bishul avoda k'chaychavim. If it's cooked and it's unnecessary for it to be cooked, it doesn't have a din of k'chaychavim. I don't know exactly. I know there's a lot of mafarshim about this, a lot of halachic discussion about what's considered eaten raw. I mean, I assume a carrot is often eaten raw, but it's more often not eaten raw. Maybe that's an example. I don't know what would be the class. I think what is the classic example of this? I guess an apple. I think an apple is more often eaten raw than baked. So like the Gemara, Besura masnu hachi. That's what they said in Surah. But Pundisa masnu hachi. They said a second tonight. Amar Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak Amar Rav Kol she'ein nechal al shulchan menachem ulefes beis hapas. Something that, in order for it to have a din of bishul akum, it has to be that anything. It has to be something that's nechal ashulchan melachim in order for it to get a din of bishul akum. If anything that's not eaten on shulchan melachim to accompany the bread does not have a din of bishul akum. My beinayu. What's the difference between the two heterim? Ikebeinayu dogim ktanim va'ardi v'daisen. The difference between them is going to be these things that are not eaten as shulchan melachim, small fish like little anchovies. I don't know. Va'ardi is mushrooms, and daisa is a kind of mush, like a wheat mush that they used to eat. These are all things that are not eaten as shulchan melachim, but so therefore they would not qualify for that. But for the first reason that they're not, these things are all things that are mostly eaten by being cooked. So therefore they would be. If you only held to the first thing, you wouldn't be. It would be considered bishul akum, but for the second reason, it's not bishul akum. Amar Rasi Amar Rav, dogim katan. Now a separate din. Okay, so we've said that that it should be something that is not eaten raw, that it's eaten cooked. Amar Rasi Amar Rav, dogim katan meluchim ein baham mishum bishulei avdei chavim. If you have salted fish, like a herring, that people will eat as is because it's salted, doesn't have a din of, if it's cooked by a guy, it doesn't get a din of bishul because it's already prepared. It's already edible before that. Amar of Yosef, if it was roasted by Ovid Kechavim, since it was previously salted, then the cooking of the Ovid Kechavim does not make it asal bishul akum. So you could use it for Erev Tavshilin. You can only use it for your Erev Tavshilin, something that you're able to eat. So he's saying this is also you're able to eat, even though the guy cooked it, since it was previously edible because of the salting. However, the Ovid Kechavim made it into this dish like this that's made with flour and small like fish oil, also because the flour component of it, when it gets cooked, it becomes it's something that wouldn't be eaten. Flour is not eaten unless it's cooked. Why would I think otherwise? I might say that the fish part is the ikar, and that part could be eaten without any further cooking. It's coming to tell you that flour is the ikar, and therefore it's also to use for to eat, and it's also to use the erev tavshilin because it has a din of bishul akum. Amar Abuna Amarav Ovid shehetzis sa'ar ba'agam. Ovid Kechavim that started a fire in the marsh. He wants to burn down the brush. Any roasted grasshoppers, if some yidden are eating, what do you call it again? Roadkill. Like they're going out and they're collecting the roasted grasshoppers after the guy started a brush fire. They're also, because it was cooked by Ovid Kechavim. If the problem is you have all these roasted grasshoppers and you can't tell if they were kosher or not, what does it make a difference that Ovid Kechavim roasted? Afilu Yisrael Nami. It's just non-kosher food. You can't eat it. It's the problem is that it's asal b'shulei Ovid Kechavim. Ki ha'gavno mi'aser. You're saying that we know that it's kosher grasshoppers, but it's also because the guy roasted it. Why should it be also? A guy who was roasting the head of a kosher animal. It's slaughtered properly. It's a kosher animal, and the guy just took upon himself. He wanted to make it more attractive for sale, so he burnt off the hair on the head of the animal. You could even eat the tips of the ears of that animal, even though it gets fully roasted. It's very soft and it's easy to roast. So the guy roasted those ears. Alma la'avurei sha'ar kamachavan. You see, in this case, he wasn't intending to cook. The guy was just trying to burn off the hair. Hachanami l'glui alma kamachavan. So too over here, how could you say he's going to be aser? The grasshoppers are aser. All this guy wanted to do was make a brush fire. He wasn't looking to make a grasshopper roast. So grasshoppers were not his intention, so they shouldn't be asal bishul akum. So Gemara, loyal b'liyada hay tar v'aytamei in chanami. We're talking about when we don't know whether they were tar or tamei grasshoppers. It just happened to be that it was a case with Ovid Kechavim, but there wasn't really relevant or essential to this case, to what happened. Let's just continue. We'll finish this up. Gufa Amar. It's not. We changed it to the same as we said before. We said it b'shem Rav Chanan Barami Amar of Pedas Amar of Yochanan. We just quoted that the guy who burns the head of a kosher animal in order to burn off the hair, you're allowed to eat from the tips, the parts that get roasted, agav, derech agav, not intentionally by the guy. Amravina, helka, chai adik yechavim, the shoda sichsala asuna, a guy who put his wooden pegs into the oven in order to season them, to harden them. The cover by Yisrael kera meikra, and a yid had put in some squash into the oven earlier. He buried it there. Shaper dummy. When those squash gets roasted, when the guy is preparing his hardware, doing his carpentry, it's kosher. It's like pshita. It's exactly the same thing. He wasn't intending to cook. He was just intending to burn his pegs and get them ready for use. No, because he was intending to burn something, to use heat to improve something. He says he's not coming to cook those pegs. He's trying to prepare them. That's not considered an intention to be mavashal, and therefore the squash that gets roasted unintentionally is not going to be considered bishul. Okay, we'll stop over here, and tomorrow we're going to get into more in depth of the halachas of when you see, when the guy prepares the eggs, you have to prepare the eggs for him and turn on the fire. All that stuff is based on the next Gemara.
What time tomorrow? 10 to 8?